and welcome to UC Today. My name is Kieran Devine and today's session is Beyond Regulation, Fulfilling a Security Duty of Care in the Hybrid Era. I'm delighted to be joined by Josh Bisch, Senior Director of Product Management at Intrado. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here today, Kieran. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Before we explore exactly what organizations' security of duty of care looks like in the hybrid era, please tell us about yourself, Josh, and your journey with Intrado.
Yeah, Kieran. So I've been with Intrado for 15 years. I've held a variety of different roles while I've been at Intrado, from operations and leading operations teams to customer success roles and working with some of our larger customers, as well as over the last 5 years have moved into and have been focused on our product portfolio and the product management group. And for those that aren't familiar with Intrado, we are one of the leading 911 providers in North America and touch about 90% of 911 calls that are made in the United States flow through an Intrado system at some point on that 911 calls journey.
And we'll soon move on to a bit more of the specifics on 911 and e911. But before we get there, I'm curious to get your thoughts on a more holistic perspective of security in the hybrid era. What would you say are some of the key challenges organizations face in securing the hybrid workplace in 2024?
Yeah, I think there's a number of considerations here. And obviously, it's becoming more and more important all the time to keep the workforce secure. And I think that applies to both a technical security as well as physical security. Obviously, the workforce is very hybrid today. I'm in the office today, I'll be at home tomorrow, and people coming and going in terms of the office setting. At the same time, I think that it's also very important to make sure that the user experience, if you're in the office or you're at home, remains the same. The workflows look the same. The requirements from an employee perspective look the same. And that really puts an onus on the companies, on the software that they're using, the platforms that they're using, to make sure that those interactions from an employee perspective stay consistent regardless of where they're working, while at the same time making sure that the cybersecurity, the technical security is all up to speed in terms of releases and encryptions and access, etc.
And moving on to E911, what exactly is it and what does it regulate organizations to do?
Yeah, E911 or enhanced 911 really consists of when a 911 call is made from any type of device, whatever that type of device would be, that call has to be routed to the correct public safety answering point, or PSAP. Those calls, those PSAPs, there's over 6,000 of them in the US. So depending on where someone is geographically, one of the challenges is making sure that call ends up at the right jurisdiction. And that's one thing that we specialize in, is making sure that call routing occurs correctly and that the person gets the nearest help possible. Additionally, making sure that the right location is delivered is also critically important, so that those PSAPs can know where to send the first responders to that incident and get somebody help as quickly as possible. Now, if we look specifically at the enterprise context, which is kind of what we're focused on today, that adds some unique challenges as well. We've already talked about the hybrid workforce and having, hard phones, PBX phones, soft phones, UCAS systems, etc. But as we look at regulations specifically, Some of the newer regulations that have come out in the last few years and what those require enterprises to do. The first one is referred to as Kari's Law. And Kari's Law really has two main components to it. The first of those is that if you're dialing 911 from an enterprise phone, and again, that could be a work force like we're talking about, that could be in a hotel setting, that could be a hospitality campus, any type of enterprise campus, that you cannot require the dialer to need to press, say, a 9 or an 8 to access 911, and that when a user picks up the phone and dials 911, that call has to be completed to 911, and cannot require any extra digits to be added to that phone number. And then the second big piece of Kari's Law is that there also has to be some type of notification that's occurring when that 911 call is placed within that enterprise. And when that 911 call is placed, that needs to be, again, the notification has to go to a security team, or some on premise team that can then quickly take action to those scenarios. And again, think of a hotel setting, think of a large enterprise business, may have multiple buildings or multiple floors. There has to be a delivery to a team that's on site and can respond to that. Now, obviously, first responders are still going to be dispatched if that 911 call is made and there is an emergency that needs to occur, but those things can take time. And if there is somebody on site that can help in those scenarios, that's kind of the intention of why that notification, that alert needs to happen. The second big regulation that is applicable for this discussion is really around Baum's Act. And what Baum's Act does is gets to that precise location requirement. And what happened before Baum's Act is, again, I'm at a large office building today, and all that would have been required is really the front door address of a building, in many cases, is what would be delivered to 911. And so when the first responders showed up at that front door, even if the building was 5 stories, they wouldn't know precisely where somebody needed help. And so with Baum's Act, the requirement is now that a much more precise location needs to be delivered from that 911 call, getting you to where is the floor that the person is on? Are they in a conference room? Are they in an office? Where's their cubicle? And more detailed description of where that call is coming from to assist in aiding a much quicker response in those scenarios.
I'm really fascinated by what you're alluding to there in terms of the importance of precise location in E911. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, location is everything when it comes to 911. And a lot of times, even though the location is delivered, call takers at the public safety answering point, the first question that they're going to ask is all around where is your emergency happening? And that is because without that location and without knowing where someone is, there's not a lot that first responder can do. And so it's imperative that the correct location is delivered. And that's really why Baum's Law, especially in the enterprise setting, and again, I use a hotel as an example, where somebody may not know where they're at, especially if it's a younger child that's needing to dial 911 or somebody that's traveling. They may not have the address. And so making sure that that is all automated and that information can be delivered to public safety so they know what room even they need to send help to is so important. And it's a big challenge to solve when you think of the large campuses that exist, the mixed phone systems that are in use today, and how you bring that all together to make it a cohesive experience for the person calling 911 as well as public safety who's trying to get to respond and help as quickly as possible. So, like I had mentioned in my earlier answer, in the past, just sending an ambulance and a fire truck to the headquarters or the front door, if you have four buildings on a campus, you may not even be at the right building. And so making sure that that precise location is there for callers in those type of settings. You think of skyscrapers and downtown and the number of, floors that those have. People could be searching for a long time to find somebody if they don't have that precise location.
Absolutely. Especially as we build higher and higher skyscrapers, these issues become ever more complex. Um, but skyscrapers have also existed for decades. What hasn't necessarily existed for decades is the new normal of the hybrid working system, the ecosystem, if you will. What are some of the challenges of complying with E911 regulations in a hybrid working model?
Yeah, and I touched on this a little bit, but you have so many disparate scenarios today. And we've talked about working at home one day and working in the office the next day. You have still PBX phones that exist, and I have one in my office. And yet, we're also using UCAS solutions as well. And obviously, there's more and more soft phones that are being introduced, and the UCAS and cloud-based communication tools are more prevalent all the time. And what we're seeing is that between employees that are on site, employees that are remote, employees that may have multiple different communication devices, or one group of employees that are using PBXs within the same enterprise, and another group that are using a UCAS system. And you can take your flavor of that, right? And that's what's so challenging, is that within an enterprise, there's so many different subsets and scenarios that are possible. And so from an enterprise 911 perspective, one of our challenges and our goals is to try to make that process as ubiquitous as possible in terms of bringing everything together and making that a seamless user experience for the caller, and getting public safety what they need, regardless of the type of device that is being used to call 911, regardless if that person is on site or off site. Being able to tie that ecosystem together and supporting all of those use cases to get the right information and the needed information to the public safety teams that will be responding to those emergencies.
And I'm keen to move more into the specifics of Intrado. You guys have a really compelling reference point where you say that employers have a duty of care that extends beyond just regulatory requirements like E911. What do you mean by a security duty of care?
Yes. So the regulations of 911 are, there to protect employees. They're there to protect somebody visiting, a hospitality establishment, those type of scenarios. We believe that, people are obviously extremely important from an enterprise perspective. The employees are the most important part of any enterprise, and protecting, visitors or guests is paramount as well. And so while these E911 regulations exist and do help and aid in that goal, I think it extends beyond that. And that really gets into that duty of care of what processes, what systems do enterprises, schools, hospitality establishments have to protect those people within their care. And one of the ways we see it going beyond the 911 call is, incident response and being prepared for those scenarios. And so what kind of processes are in place? What kind of drills and training is in place? How are you setting up for that incident that you hope never happens? But if it does, there needs to be time that's put in on the front end to make sure that there's a response plan that's ready, an incident plan that's ready, for multiple different scenarios, right? Could be weather related, human caused, medical emergencies, etc., right? All of those need to be considered and planned for, and have an execution plan that when those occur, that the whole organization knows how to respond to those scenarios to keep people protected. And that means when and if, and hopefully never, but if those type of scenarios happen, and unfortunately we see them happen more and more all the time now, that organization is ready to protect and care for those people within their span of responsibility. And then it also goes beyond that occurrence, and that how are you responding even after the fact from a reunification perspective with the folks that are there. How are you bringing everybody back together safely? How are you recovering from the incident that occurred, and making sure that that's really a cohesive, streamlined process to keep those people safe, and make sure that duty of care is executed against.
And moving on to some specific solutions that Intrado can offer to address these challenges, can you please tell us a little bit about Intrado Safety Suite?
Yeah, so Safety Suite is really us moving beyond. I've talked a lot about 911 and the importance of 911, and it is at the core and the DNA of what Intrado does. But one of the things, and why we think that duty of care is so important, is moving beyond just that 911 call and all the important components there. So Safety Suite is a solution that Intrado has that tries to bring together that whole scenario. And so it really consists of three main components. One is a wearable panic button, or a hardware device that an employee or a teacher, or a chaperone, anybody like that could leverage, and a lone worker situation. And if those scenarios, if there's an emergency scenario, that panic button can be pressed and can get somebody and notify the right people immediately, which in some cases goes directly to 911 and make sure that 911 is aware of those scenarios, or again could be signaling help from the security team on premise. And so that panic button is really important to make sure that help can be signaled immediately, quickly, and that responses can occur as quickly as possible. The second aspect of Safety Suite is really an incident management platform that we have. And I touched on all the different kinds of events that can occur that may need to be responded to, from a weather event to a human scenario to a medical emergency. And all of those are going to require different responses, different reactions, and different levels of involvement from public safety or a non-premise security type team. And so this incident management software that we have takes into consideration all of those use cases, and helps connect the situation that's happening with the right people, and has the incident response plan. So if it says, hey, here's a tornado that's coming, like here's the incident response plan that needs to happen here. Whereas if it's in a medical emergency, here would be the response plan that's required. And that is all then connected into a PSIM platform, a physical security platform that we have that can be deployed on premise, and does a lot of different things, such as can lock doors, can lock down certain places in a building, can produce announcements over a loudspeaker, can put up signage to help people respond. And so the Safety Suite solution made up of kind of those different components that I've mentioned really allow an enterprise, a school, a hospital, hospitality, hotel, the ability to respond to those emergencies that are happening within their span of control.
One final question before I let you go, Josh, and it's
Yep.
touching maybe on an expansion of what we were just discussing. But can Intrado E911 and Intrado Safety Suite provide a comprehensive safety solution for organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kieran. That is really what we're after, and like I mentioned, 911 being so critical to our DNA and supporting enterprises today from a 911 perspective, and now having the safety suite portfolio, which adds incident management and panic button and physical security elements to it, tying those all together can really be powerful because we have the connections directly into 911 to be able to deliver those emergency events to 911, as well as being able to go above and beyond that and even delivering data that is not traditionally received today by public safety. But that could be enterprise floor plans. That could be information around, who's in the building, who's badged in, so that public safety knows, the scope and scale. And as we talk about the reunification aspect of things, understanding how they can, how many people need to be accounted for as they respond to those situations. And even the call, if a call is made from a 911, 911 is made, 911 call is made from an enterprise phone, that can also tie into the safety suite platform to initiate the emergency response and incident planning. That data can be fed into safety suite. And so between the 911 capabilities that we have, the connections to public safety, the ability to deliver data directly to public safety, and then the tie-in with the enterprise and understanding that ecosystem and the emergency response planning, all of these solutions can come together to really provide an end-to-end holistic solution that gets to that duty of care that we've talked about and make sure that people are staying safe within those scenarios.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like both a very comprehensive but also very seamless and intuitive system you guys have created. I think that's all we've got time for today. But thank you, Josh, for being here. I've really enjoyed today's session.
Thank you, Kieran. I really appreciate the time.
And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share on social media, and we'll see you next time. I've been Kieran Devlin of UC Today. Thanks for watching.